Okay, our next interview is with David Lilburne of Antipodean. Is that pronounced correctly?
Antipodean, if you are from the area.
Okay, what area is that?
Well, originally Australia.
Okay, originally Australia. David, why don't you just talk a little bit about your youth, what schools you went to, how you got interested in the book business, the countries you've traveled into. Bring us a little bit from the time that you were a young person to right about now, family, etc., businesses, etc. Just go.
Okay, that's the big question. I grew up in Perth, Western Australia. My father was a doctor, an obstetrician. He had very little time off. Never came on holidays with us. He was always working. He'd take us to school in the morning and give us a kiss at night at 8:30, 9 o'clock when he came home, and that was it. Never saw him. And Sunday lunch was the only time we had together. The only enjoyment he got outside business was to buy books. And so every time he went from one hospital to the other for the deliveries, he would stop in and put bids in at auction on all the auction lots. The books came up. And sometimes, the only time we got to be with him was to go with him in the car, go to the hospitals with him. And so we got to go to the auction houses and learn it, and to the bookshops. And, we'd see him buying books. And the house, of course, ended up being full of books. Our hallway, bookshelves made all the way down the hallway. Every time a kid left home, it became a book room. Another lot of books would come in. The garage, they decided that since we don't have really bad weather, no snow, no salt, they decided that that was a waste of time, waste of space. A compactus was bought, secondhand, from one of the auction houses, and we put it up in the garage, and there was another 25,000 books put in the garage, which over the years I helped to contribute to, and so we ended up with a complete set of Punch magazine from the beginning, complete set of Illustrated London News, all with the supplements and the folding panoramas. And this is how when I grew up, it was always books. So I went to college. I studied business, which unfortunately I had to unlearn when I went into the book trade. But I finished that, and I always knew that because we were isolated in Western Australia, that I'd be travelling. So from the time I was 12, I knew that I was travelling. I didn't know what I was going to do, but first thing you do is get a piece of paper from the university and move. So I landed in London in December 1974. Tripped around Europe like most Australians do, ended up back in London, got a job managing a youth hostel. And while I was there, I met Kathy. That was 1975. And she was studying at the Sorbonne. And she came to London, and we met in London, and we became friends. And then, eventually I went travelling with Kathy, and that's another story. But Mum and Dad came to London for Christmas, brought the rest of the family over with them. I put the kids up in the youth hostel with me, and I found an apartment for them down the road. And we had a lovely Christmas together. And Dad said to me, "Look, you're in London. You're in the centre of books. Why don't you buy me some books? And we can, we've got more room in the house. We can fit some more books. Give me some." So I was already with Kathy at that stage. So we did. We started going to. I walked around the auction houses and had a little look in the places, but realised when you're beginning that wasn't a good place to begin. I didn't have the capital. He wasn't. He was going to buy things from me, but he certainly wasn't going to put money up front. So you had to work on your guile a little bit. So we went to Portobello Road and Bermondsey Market, and eventually, when we left the hostel, we started doing this at the hostel, going around to the markets and buying in the bookshops. Eventually, when we left there, we moved to Muswell Hill, and our next door neighbour ran a cash register company, and so he used to commission me to be his sales agent, to go around the country to do trade fairs for cash registers, distribute the ones that were sold, and do the staff training. and for that he'd pay me mileage and hotels, etc. So on the understanding that I could also go and do booking after that. So early on I got to do a lot of miles around the United Kingdom, which at the time was the centre of the book world. I happen to believe it's moved slightly to the west now in New York, but
yeah, well.
So I got a great introduction to what was available, what was the pricings. So Kathy and I worked at that for, let me see, till 1982, from 76 to 82.
In
the UK, from Muswell Hill. In 1982, we decided that we would like to be in America. And so Kathy came back to America where her parents were. I stayed in Muswell Hill to pack the container up. We ended up with one container of books, thousands of volumes, bookshelves, everything. And we shipped them over. We didn't have a place yet. It didn't matter. We managed to rent a place and put all the books out, and we started business over here. You know, at that stage we had a mailing list, mainly Australian related, because we'd been starting with Dad, and we'd of course spread out to other Australian interests. So we had a reasonably good mailing list. But when we came to America, we thought, well, really, we should be in the market in America, selling to Americans. So we tried to do that. But it was interesting. At the time, the market was so different. It must have taken us 5 years. I don't know whether it's because of my lack of intelligence or what, but to unlearn what I learnt in Britain to learn the American market. Totally different. Anyway, we sort of cracked it, enough to make it a viable concern. And 1985, we were still learning. We did our first New York book fair at the Armory.
In 1985?
1985. We set up, we put our Australian books out, we put a few prints out, we put a few maps out. We tried to do Americana, but we really didn't have the knowledge then. And so everybody just walked straight past our booth. Nobody even walked in. We had half a booth. Ray Smith had joined at the same time as I did, doing American art monograms. So we weren't really symbiotic. We had two different areas. So as I say, people looked in, saw Antipodean or Antipodean, and they just kept walking. So I had to start dragging people in to try and sell things to them. Yeah. But at the end of the time, we really didn't make much headway until a gentleman came in who was interested in Fiji. He had just bought an island in Fiji. And he said, "Oh, I want to put up a library of Fijian material." Hey, now we're talking. We're finally getting somebody, which just goes to show what New York can do. You can turn up collectors for all sorts of things. And when you have a venue like the New York Book Fair, they will come to you. You'll find them. They will find you. It's amazing. So I've been a great advocate for the fair ever since, and its prominence in the world market. So he bought reasonably well then when I brought stuff down the next day, and by the end of the year we had a nice relationship and a nice cash flow, and we really felt very solidly into the American market. But that was really the first customer that became a full collector. So where were we?
We're at 1985.
We're at 1985. What happened then? 1985, at the same time we're thinking, look, we must be looking for the local market. We're realising that, Fiji, okay, that's great. It's an area we know. We're still going to have to spread out a little bit further because we're still too colloquial for Australia. We look south to the Antarctic. So right then we started in the Antarctic. I've always had a love for that anyway, and Douglas Mawson was a big hero for most Australians. And so we started doing Antarctic books in a little way. And so that helped widen the appeal. We also spread out more into the map area right about then and started putting maps together, and really that was sort of the foundation year for our development of where we are today. It was 1985.
Now, you have 3 children?
We have 3 children.
Ages?
The oldest is 23, born in 1985. I think it's a seminal year.
Yeah.
2 years apart, 3 boys. One's now living and working in Australia, the oldest, 23. The 20-year-old who turns 21 in a few days' time, this being April 2009, he graduated last year from culinary school down in Miami, and he has deferred his acceptance to the University of Colorado at Boulder, where he wants to go and study business or something like that. Now that he's got a culinary certificate under his belt, he wants to do something else. And he also loves lacrosse, so he does want to play for a very good team, and Boulder has a very good club.
Yeah, very strong.
Very strong team. But he is, that's what he wants to do. And the third one is at school in Pennsylvania, down at Moravian College, and he's studying liberal arts, and we will see where that leads him.
Any of them have any interest in the business?
Like all kids, or children, should I say, they sort of rebel against where the parents go is not their first choice. So to get them to read or to get them excited in the book area was tough. I mean, we worked very hard at it, but the more you try, the more they push backwards. I'm seeing them now turning around and looking and saying, "Oh, that is a little bit more interesting. Can I help you do this?" And Doug, the middle one, the chef one, has been home for 6 months, and he said, "Look, let me do some scanning for you," because he loves the computer. So he's been scanning and looking at things and saying, "Oh, I see why people like that." Which of course shows us that if you educate, you can get customers, even in the young. They do understand. They don't have a history, and you've really got to reach out to them to get them to understand what we do. It's so alien. I mean, when we grew up, it was books were automatic. You didn't have to think about it. These guys think digital or comic, but illustrative, but they don't think books and literature.
Talk a little bit about the internet. What part does it play in your business? David Brass sees it as a foe of the bookseller. Alan Stipek sees it as a friend of the bookseller. Where are you in this discussion?
I've been accused of being slap bang in the middle of everything. Politics, social history, the whole thing. Internet, the same thing. I see it as both. We've watched the internet come in and gain acceptance and being used as an implement to purchase, introductions to people, which has meant when the internet started, and it was right, again, we keep coming back to this date, 1985, I think we got our first computers right around then. We found that if you put your books online, people found them and bought them. It was great. And then as the years went on, more and more people came in. And as more people came in, it became, you're one of many. You're not unique anymore. And the older booksellers knew they had to, even though they didn't want to get into technology, had to get into technology. I mean, I was forced into it because I missed a collection of cook material because it was online and I didn't have the computer before then, and I missed it. So I soon learnt it and got stuff out there. Not everything, but enough. And it gave me a little bit of cash flow when before that I was dependent on the book fairs. I'd have to sell. So I did London, I did Australia, I did New York, I did California. This took the pressure off, gave you the cash flow to keep going, and so then you could quote everything else. It was great. And then more and more people came on, and then the race to the bottom began.
Yeah.
And now it's, if you've got something really good, well, fantastic. You can put it online and you can be assured of selling it. But if you've got anything with any sort of apology, nick in the dust jacket, fray on the spine, lacking this, forget it. Yeah. You're competing with the amateur from Maine or Iowa, no overheads, no nothing, working out of the garage, who bought the book at a jumble sale for 50 cents. They go online, they see your price, they cut and paste the description, and they knock the price down by 20%, 30%, whatever. So, and the next person, so other people just come and cut and paste and do it below him or her. So there is the race on to the bottom. So the regular stuff is it. So we're all trying to find a way to go ahead. Now, I'd already worked out that I had to do more than just books. I knew that I had to do ephemera. I had to do postcards. I had to do maps, documents, autographs. So, because, I didn't know my Americana well enough to just stick to that area. And that's helped me a lot, because there are certain areas there where you don't want to be buying on the internet. Autographs, for instance. I mean, the statistic that I've heard bandied around was that 95% of all autographs on eBay are forged.
I think that's a good estimate.
Yeah, and so then it relies on your street credibility. Are you a reliable source? And that's where the ABAA is vital in this day and age. We have ethics and are very well governed as far as you've got to offer the right product, and if you don't, you must make right. And so it's good.
Well, when you talk about the ABAA, you're a past president of the ABAA, as I am, and I had a whole different set of problems when I was president than you had when you were president.
Everybody does.
One of the things that I see happening is an older generation of booksellers fading away and not a younger generation of booksellers coming along to sort of take their place. How do you see it?
You're right. And we have been trying to address that. As you know, on the way to becoming president, you always go through the membership chair. And one of the things I was trying to do, I do a lot of travelling in the New England area, what we would call shadow fairs, non-ABAA shadow fairs. And constantly I'd be looking at people and saying, hey, I'm membership chair. Hey, what about the ABAA? Why aren't you joining? Think of the credibility you'll get, everything else. And, and then you'll be able to do the New York Book Fair, the Boston Book Fair, etc., etc. And I drummed up an amount, and I got membership moving forwards to a new group. I think, and I don't know whether, again, I don't want to put me as the turning point for this, because I know that before that we were looking. But the older booksellers were a different breed. A lot of them had been in the business a long time. They have an amount of capital. They're not hand-to-mouth dealers. And a lot of the newer dealers today are hand-to-mouth. And I know that the older members, and in fact I was told, we don't really want some of the riffraff that's coming through. Well, that's not my opinion. My opinion is, if you want a vibrant ABAA, you want to be able to talk to the government as the authority on antiquarian books. And to do that, you have to have a good membership. You have to have a bigger membership. You don't want to be the elite. You want to be the group that covers antiquarian books. And so you have to have people in that are hand-to-mouth. And I don't say that in a derogatory term.
No.
People that make their living off the trading of books. And so, I was asking those people to join. And I know that our new chair of membership is Sarah Baldwin. And Sarah, even today at the AGM, said, look, we are aging, we've got to bring in more people. And I know she's working on it too, where it's really a high-profile objective of the board to try and bring more people in. I think we will. I think we will get those. We may have to branch out at some stage. See, we're the Antiquarian Book Dealers Association, and it doesn't say anything about maps, doesn't say anything about prints, autographs. People have joined from those areas. It may be that we have to be more active in, let's say, an area like ephemera. There is an ephemera association, but there's no sort of postcard. There's only regional postcards. Maybe some of these areas have to come in. Maybe we have to go to comic books. I don't know. We're to try and get these younger people in and keep it vibrant.
Well, what do you say to the critics who are now saying we're lowering our standards in order to increase our membership?
Yes, but what are your standards? Your standards are ethics. Your standards are standing behind your product and saying, this is what it is, this is a fair price for it, and you can buy it. Is it any different if it's a comic or an Ortelius Atlas? There's no difference.
Except in price.
Oh, except in price. Now, one of the beauties, back in '85, the New York Book Fair was a very affordable thing. We had all MAC members. Now, I don't say all. I don't know. We had 100.
A large percentage.
We had 144 members when I was membership chair from Mid-Atlantic chapter, and we had 50, 60 members. Today, we have 8 to 10 MAC members doing the show, which of course has made it difficult for purchasing. So if you come to a fair, there's two ways to do a fair. You can come to sell, and New York is a good place to sell because you have the customers with the knowledge and the money. But you don't really come here to buy. But in 1985, you could. You'd come into the fair, you'd go around, and it was like a fishing pond. So the bigger dealers could buy from the little ones. The little ones would be ecstatic because they would get their take, and the bigger ones would get theirs, and they would be selling to the.
But the association has priced these people out of this book fair.
Yes.
And that is, to me, a very bad thing because, as you say, these are people we were buying stuff from.
Yes.
And to a certain extent helping us build our inventory.
Absolutely.
Now they no longer exist within this framework.
Well, not within here, but see, we should be doing a satellite fair at the same, just like the Shadow ABAA show. We do not want to exclude those people. I don't think we should be elite. I don't think we're an elitist organisation. I don't look at it as that. Mm-hmm. Yes, I do know what you're saying. There are some older members that feel that is lowering standard. I don't. I think we should be doing more fairs with more affordable prices. I wouldn't change the New York Book Fair. It works. Mm-hmm. And we've got a few, in fact, there are a few people that rely on their day-to-day incomes that are doing this fair. Mm-hmm. And they're making their way, they're getting there. And I'm saying, congratulations, well done. I think that good booksellers actually can make it to the New York Book Fair, even at this level, at this market. So I wouldn't change a thing about the New York Book Fair. I think Sandy's done a great job. He does a good fair and brings the right people in that are knowledgeable, interested, and able to purchase. All I would do is supplement and have other fairs that a more general ABA population can afford. We wouldn't be attracting the European dealers, which have come in to take a lot of the place. And there we can have the fishing pond, if you will.
Well, a regional book fair would really attract booksellers from a particular region, not necessarily invite, Europeans may not want to be involved in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania fair. No. But still in all, when I first started doing book fairs, they were cheap.
Yes.
And then as time has gone on, David, it keeps getting more and more expensive to the point where the average middle-class dealer looks at the New York Book Fair as an elitist show.
It is.
Because the people in it are selling books that are in the multi-thousands.
But Michael, I look at that just like it is air travel. And when I fly to Australia, I sit in the cattle class. I'm in economy class.
Yeah.
And I look at business and first class and I say, great, thank you for paying the premium. You've helped subsidise my trip to Australia. I look at the New York Book Fair the same way. Don, Bill, thank you for doing the fair. Thank you for taking the double stand, having 10 million dollars worth of books
Right.
sitting out there. My books out here with your customers, thank you very much.
Right.
It's not elitist to me. Thank you for bringing that in. You know, I am there. Their customers are here. You know, if you've got good material and those people are smart and walk around, you'll sell to them.
Oh, yeah.
So, no, it's not an elitist fair. If you are a bookseller that needs to keep turning things over to do it, New York is still a place you can do it. It's just a scary amount of money to come up with in the first place.
It's intimidating.
It's intimidating, and yes, I know too. It even shakes me, and I've been doing it long enough, but I know it works.
Yeah.
And what I would do, as I say, I would try and sponsor a satellite show. I would, and make that. I don't know what they're paying. They're not paying much more than $1,000. It's around $1,000. And you can.
There are some fairs where you can get a table for example, the Austin Book Fair, which is a regional book fair. You can rent a table for $60 a table.
Yes. Well, that's Austin, but I'm talking New York market at the moment, and even New York.
Austin has its multimillionaires as well.
Oh yes,
And
but you've got to have your big boys, if I can.
Yeah, and there aren't any big boys left there anymore.
No, I know, but you've got to have your big boys displaying to bring those people in. So you know, I don't want that as a shadow fair. I'd have it as a primary fair, but I wouldn't have it as a shadow. I you know, for the New York market and the Mid-Atlantic chapter, I would sponsor the shadow fair, and allow our members to do it. And I think we would have a full participation, because everyone wants to do New York. Everyone wants access to the market, but nobody can afford it. Yeah, well, no, so I take that. Some people can't afford it or feel intimidated enough not to be able to afford it.
We've got a couple of minutes left, David. Just off the top of your head, if a younger bookseller or a middle-aged bookseller came to you and said, David, I'm thinking about becoming a bookseller, what advice would you give that individual in this day and age?
If a young in fact, I've had this happen to me.
Everybody has an experience like
that. Yeah,
that.
sure. They came in, and it was actually, he wanted to do maps and prints. And I said, well, the first words out of my mouth were, good luck. And he actually did do it. I would say, learn before you jump in. Most of them are already collectors, so they have a pretty fair idea. But learn your stuff, know your market, what's going on. Try to define where you want to fit into that market. You know, don't do the shotgun approach and try and hit all areas, you know, straight off. Start with an area, learn who your customers are, what universities purchase, what area you like. Try to make appointments with them. Go to the dealers in those areas and say, look, I'm looking to get into the game. Have you got any tips for me? And I know if for instance, Modern First's area, I know if you wanted to go into that area and went to see, say, Tom Congleton and talk to Tom, and Tom would say, well, look, you know, be careful, you know, your dust jackets, you've got to make sure there's lots of every area has their own little areas that you have to watch out for, you know, that you can get caught up on.
I like the answer that Doug Harding gave. I asked him what he thinks of that, and he said the first thing I would tell them is own your own building.
Yes.
Which I thought was pretty damn good advice when you think about it.
I think we have mags in this world because they own their own building. I think we've got Argosy in this world today because they own their own building. Yes, but I think that's long term. You know, when you do a day-to-day, you don't think about that. That just happens to work out at the end of the day. Right now, the building prices are coming down a bit. I don't think the books are coming down as much as the building prices. No. So I think we're quite happy where we're sitting, owning the house and owning stock.
Yeah, well, it sounds pretty good. Thanks very much, David, for your 30-minute interview, and I enjoyed it a lot. I hope you did too.
Thank you, Michael.